The Forgotten World. In the far reaches of the Andromeda Galaxy, orbiting a binary star system, lay the lush world of Aether. Its azure skies were dotted with floating islands, held aloft by powerful magnetic fields emanating from the planet's core. On these islands, and across the verdant continents below, lived the Aetheri, a species as gentle as they were brilliant. The Aetheri were known throughout their local star cluster for their mastery of biotechnology. Their cities were living, breathing entities, grown from genetically modified plants that provided shelter, sustenance, and even rudimentary computing power. They had no need for metals or electronics. Every aspect of their civilization was in harmony with the natural world. Lyra, a young Aetheri scientist, stood at the edge of her floating laboratory, her iridescent skin shimmering in the light of the twin suns. Her large, multifaceted eyes surveyed the beauty of her homeworld, but her heart was heavy with worry. For the first time in their recorded history, the Aetheri faced a threat they couldn't understand or counter. "Lyra, you're needed in the council chamber," came a gentle voice from behind her. It was Jen, her research partner and closest friend. Lyra turned, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with anxiety. "Have they reached a decision?" Jen's own patterns dimmed in response. "I don't know, but the long-range sensors have detected more Krix ships entering our system. We're running out of time." The Krix Empire, a warmongering race of insectoid aliens, had been expanding aggressively through the galaxy for decades. They consumed worlds, stripped them of resources, and moved on, leaving barren husks in their wake. Now, they had set their sights on Aether. As Lyra and Jen made their way to the council chamber, they passed through corridors of living tissue, pulsing with nutrients and information. The entire city was abuzz with nervous energy, its very walls reflecting the anxiety of its inhabitants. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater, its curved walls lined with bioluminescent panels that shifted and swirled with data. The 5 members of the Aetheri High Council sat at its center, their aged forms radiating wisdom and concern in equal measure. High Counselor Vex, the eldest among them, gestured for Lyra to approach. "Young one, share with us your findings." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "Honor Council, our latest simulations confirm our worst fears. The Krix fleet will reach Aether in less than a standard solar cycle. Our defenses, such as they are, will not hold." A murmur of dismay rippled through the gathered Aetheri. They were a peaceful species. The concept of warfare was alien to them. "What of our allies?" asked Counselor Mira, her patterns flashing with hope. "Surely the Galactic Confederation will come to our aid." Jen stepped forward, shaking his head sadly. "We've sent out distress calls to all known spacefaring races within range. The responses have been disappointing." He waved a tendril, and the chamber's walls lit up with a series of messages. The assembled Aetheri read them in stunned silence. The Volcran Imperium. "Regret to inform that current political climate prevents direct intervention." The Solari Collective. "Our non-interference directive prohibits involvement in conflicts outside our sphere." The Nexus Alliance. "The strategic value of Aether does not justify the potential losses in a conflict with the Krix." Message after message, each a polite refusal to help. The Aetheri's peaceful nature and their distance from major trade routes had left them isolated when they needed allies the most. High Counselor Vex's voice cut through the silence. "Is there truly no one who will stand with us?" As if in answer, a new message flashed across the chamber walls. Its origin was unknown, its contents brief. "We hear you. Help is coming. Hold on. Earth." The council chamber erupted in confusion. Earth. The name was unfamiliar to most Aetheri. A few scholars recognized it as a small, unremarkable world on the fringes of the Milky Way galaxy. Lyra's mind raced. She had studied xenobiology extensively and had a passing familiarity with Earth and its dominant species, humans. But they were considered a young, barely spacefaring race. What could they possibly do against the might of the Krix Empire? High Counselor Vex raised his tendrils for silence. We cannot pin our hopes on an unknown factor. We must prepare for the worst. Lyra, Zhen, your team's work on adaptive biotechnology may be our only defense. You have the full resources of Aether at your disposal. Do what you can. As the council session adjourned, Lyra and Zhen hurried back to their laboratory. The weight of their entire civilization rested on their shoulders. Do you think these humans can actually help us? Zhen asked as they worked, their tendrils weaving complex biotech structures. Lyra paused, considering. I don't know. But right now, they're the only ones who've offered. We have to hope. Outside their laboratory window, the twin suns of Aether began to set, casting long shadows across the floating islands. In the darkening sky, the first stars became visible, and among them, unseen but drawing ever closer, were the ships of the Krix fleet. The Aetheri worked through the night, their cities glowing with feverish activity. They were a people unaccustomed to conflict, facing an enemy that knew nothing but war. Their only allies were an unknown race from a distant galaxy. As Aether's inhabitants prepared for the coming storm, none of them could have imagined the series of events their distress call had set in motion, nor the impact that Vex shook his head. Nothing beyond that initial communication. And even if these humans truly intend to help, what can one young species do against the might of the Krix Empire? As if in answer to his question, the chamber's communication system chimed. A new message was incoming, originating from deep space. The council members held their breath as the transmission resolved itself into a visual feed. The being that appeared on the screen was unlike anything the Aetheri had seen before. It stood upright on two legs, with two arms and a round head atop a sturdy torso. Its skin was a warm brown, its eyes dark and intense. When it spoke, it did so with a voice that resonated with determination. Greetings, people of Aether. I am Admiral Kira Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. We received your distress call and are en route to your world. Our advanced scouts have already entered your system and are gathering intelligence on the Krix fleet. We will arrive in force within 72 of your planetary rotations. The council chamber erupted in a chorus of flashing bioluminescence, the Aetheri equivalent of excited chatter. High Counselor Vex raised his tendrils for silence before addressing the human. Admiral Chen, we are grateful for your offer of assistance, but we must ask, why? Why would you come to the aid of a species you've never met, against an enemy as powerful as the Krix? The Admiral's expression softened slightly. Because it's the right thing to do. Because we humans know what it's like to face overwhelming odds. And because if we don't make a stand here, on Aether, we'll only be facing the Krix later, on less favorable terms. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled Aetheri. We're not promising victory. The Krix are formidable, and we're a long way from home. But we promise you this, you will not face this threat alone. Earth stands with Aether. As the transmission ended, the council chamber was filled with a mix of hope and trepidation. The Aetheri had been offered a lifeline, but from a source they knew little about. Could they trust these humans? Did they have any choice? Outside the council chamber, word of the human intervention spread rapidly. For many Aetheri, it rekindled a spark of hope that had been all but extinguished. In laboratories, workshops, and bioforges across the planet, work intensified. If the humans were willing to fight for Aether, then the Aetheri would do everything in their power to support them. Lyra and Zhen, upon hearing the news, redoubled their efforts. If we can integrate our biotechnology with human defensive systems, Lyra mused, we might create something the Krix have never encountered before. Zhen nodded, his patterns pulsing with renewed energy. A synthesis of our two species' strengths. It's an intriguing possibility. As night fell on Aether, its inhabitants looked to the stars with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Somewhere out there, the Krix fleet was approaching, a relentless tide of destruction. But now, racing against time, came an unexpected ally. The fate of Aether, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. In 72 rotations, they would learn whether humanity's intervention would be their salvation or merely delay the inevitable. And in the void between stars, two fleets converged on a once-forgotten world, one bent on conquest, the other on a mission of salvation. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity's stand. The 3 days following Admiral Chen's transmission were a whirlwind of activity on Aether. The planet's floating islands, once serene havens of scientific pursuit and artistic expression, now buzzed with preparations for the coming conflict. In orbit, the first human ships arrived, swift, stealthy vessels that slipped past the advancing Krix fleet to reach Aether. These were not warships but rather reconnaissance craft and engineering vessels, crewed by some of humanity's best and brightest. On the largest of Aether's floating islands, a clearing had been created in the living city. Here, a group of human engineers worked alongside ethery scientists, setting up a command and control center that would serve as the nexus for the coming defense. Lyra and Jen found themselves at the heart of this cooperation, their expertise in ethery biotechnology proving invaluable as the two species raced to integrate their disparate technologies. "It's remarkable," Lyra marveled, watching a human engineer deftly manipulate a holographic interface. "Your technology is so inorganic, yet it achieves results similar to our most advanced biocomputronics." The engineer, a young woman named Dr. Yuki Tanaka, grinned. "And I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that your entire city is basically one giant, living supercomputer. Imagine the processing power we could achieve if we could successfully merge our systems." Humanity's stand. The 3 days following Admiral Chen's transmission were a whirlwind of activity on Aether. The planet's floating islands, once serene havens of scientific pursuit and artistic expression, now buzzed with preparations for the coming conflict. In orbit, the first human ships arrived, swift, stealthy vessels that slipped past the advancing Krix fleet to reach Aether. These were not warships but rather reconnaissance craft and engineering vessels, crewed by some of humanity's best and brightest. On the largest of Aether's floating islands, a clearing had been created in the living city. Here, a group of human engineers worked alongside ethery scientists, setting up a command and control center that would serve as the nexus for the coming defense. Lyra and Jen found themselves at the heart of this cooperation, their expertise in ethery biotechnology proving invaluable as the two species raced to integrate their disparate technologies. "It's remarkable," Lyra marveled, watching a human engineer deftly manipulate a holographic interface. "Your technology is so inorganic, yet it achieves results similar to our most advanced biocomputronics." The engineer, a young woman named Dr. Yuki Tanaka, grinned. "And I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that your entire city is basically one giant, living supercomputer. Imagine the processing power we could achieve if we could successfully merge our systems." Their work was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Chen, accompanied by High Counselor Vex. The human admiral's presence was commanding, her uniform crisp despite the long journey from Earth. Vex, by contrast, seemed to shimmer and shift, his bioluminescent patterns a complex dance of emotions. "Report, Dr. Tanaka," Chen said, her voice carrying across the busy command center. Yuki straightened. "We've made significant progress, Admiral. The ethery biotechnology is incredibly adaptable. We're in the process of creating a hybrid defense grid that should be able to detect and potentially deflect Krix energy weapons." Chen nodded, then turned to Lyra and Jen. "And what of your end? Any breakthroughs?" Lyra's patterns pulsed with excitement. "We believe so, Admiral. By combining our atmospheric spores with your nanite technology, we've created a self-replicating defensive swarm. In theory, it should be able to interfere with Krix communications and possibly even their ship systems." "Excellent work, all of you," Chen said. "But we're not out of the woods yet. The main Krix fleet will be here in less than 48 hours, and our own reinforcements are still at least 12 hours behind them. High Counselor Vex spoke up, his voice a melodious hum. Admiral, my High Counselor Vex spoke up, his voice a melodious hum. Admiral, my people are grateful for your assistance, but we remain a peaceful species. We have no experience in warfare. How can we contribute to our own defense? Admiral Chen's expression softened. Counselor, your people's pacifism is not a weakness. It's the very thing we're fighting to preserve. Your scientists, like Lyra and Jen here, are already making invaluable contributions, but there's more you can do. She activated a holographic display, showing a map of Aether and its surrounding space. The Crix will likely target your major population centers first. We need to coordinate a planet-wide evacuation to your most secure locations, underground bunkers, submarine cities, anywhere that's difficult for the Crix to reach. Vex's bioluminescent pattern swirled with concern. But surely spreading our people out would make us more vulnerable. On the contrary, Chen explained, it denies the Crix easy targets and forces them to divide their forces if they want to subjugate your population. Plus, your biotechnology allows you to communicate across vast distances. You can coordinate and adapt even when separated. As the planning continued, a commotion at the edge of the command center drew everyone's attention. A human scout rushed in, her face pale with urgency. Admiral, she called out, we've detected a Crix advance force. They'll be within striking distance of Aether in less than 6 hours. The news sent a ripple of alarm through the assembled Aetheri, their bioluminescent patterns flashing in distress. Admiral Chen's face hardened, but her voice remained steady. It seems the Crix are not content to wait for their main fleet. Very well. We'll have to accelerate our plans. She turned to her staff. Begin powering up our orbital defenses, and get me a direct line to Earth. We need to push our reinforcements to arrive sooner. As the humans sprang into action, Lyra approached the Admiral. What can we do to help? Chen looked at the young Aetheri scientist, seeing the determination in her multifaceted eyes. Your atmospheric spore network. How quickly can you deploy it? Lyra's tendrils waved in thought. With the modifications we've made and the help of your nanites, we could have planetary coverage in about 4 hours. Make it 3, Chen said. That's our best chance at an early warning system and our first line of defense. As Lyra hurried off with Jen to begin the deployment, Admiral Chen turned back to the tactical display. The situation was grim. A handful of human ships and hastily prepared defenses against the vanguard of one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy. But as she looked around at the humans and Aetheri working side by side, Chen felt a surge of hope. This was why humanity had come, not just to save one alien race, but to prove that in the face of overwhelming odds, standing together was always better than standing alone. In orbit above Aether, the human ships began to move into defensive positions. They were outnumbered, and in many ways, outgunned. But they had something the Crix could never understand, a cause worth fighting for. As the hours ticked by, tension mounted. The Aetheri, a species that had never known war, prepared to face an enemy that knew nothing else. And beside them stood humanity, young and brash by galactic standards, yet willing to risk everything for an alien race they had only just met. The first signs of the Crix advance force appeared on long-range sensors, a swarm of sleek, predatory ships, their hulls bristling with weapons. As they entered the Aether system, they encountered no resistance, no attempts at communication. The Crix commanders, used to terror and capitulation, felt the first stirrings of unease. Where was the panic, the pleading, the futile attempts at appeasement? Instead, as they approached the azure world of Aether, they found a planet wrapped in an eerie, shimmering field, the hybrid spore nanite network created by Lyra and her team. And in high orbit, a small but determined fleet of Earth ships waited, weapons primed. Admiral Chen's voice crackled across all frequencies, addressing both her own forces and the approaching Crix. This is Admiral Kira Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. To all human forces, remember your training, watch out for each other, and fight with everything you've got. To the Cricks, this planet is under our protection. Turn back now, or face the consequences of your aggression. There was a moment of tense silence. Then, with a burst of energy signatures, the Cricks fleet opened fire. The battle for Aether had begun. The Cricks' energy weapons lanced out, expecting to tear through primitive defenses. Instead, they met the hybrid shield created by human and Aetheri technology. The shield flickered and strained but held, dispersing much of the energy harmlessly into space. From the command center on Aether's surface, Lyra watched in awe as the human ships engaged the Cricks. They were outnumbered at least 3-1, but they fought with a ferocity and skill that left her breathless. Earth fighters darted between lumbering Cricks cruisers, their agility making up for their lack of heavy armor. Human capital ships coordinated their fire, concentrating on weak points in the Cricks formation that the Aetheri's detailed scans had revealed. But the Cricks were not a galactic power for nothing. Their ships began to adapt, changing formation and adjusting their weapons to more effectively combat the human tactics. Slowly but surely, they began to push through the defensive line. "Admiral," one of the human officers called out, "we can't hold them much longer. Our shields are failing, and we've lost 2 destroyers already." Chen's face was grim, but her voice never wavered. "Hold the line. Our reinforcements will be here. We just need to buy more time." As if in answer to her words, new contacts appeared on the long-range sensors, but they weren't the hoped-for human reinforcements. They were more Cricks ships, a second wave of the advance force, arriving ahead of schedule. High Counselor Vex, watching from beside Admiral Chen, felt a wave of despair wash over him. "It's over," he said softly. "There are too many." Chen turned to him, her eyes blazing with determination. "It's not over until we say it's over. Your people have survived for millennia. You've created wonders that my species can barely comprehend. Now it's time to use all of that knowledge, all of that creativity, to fight back." She gestured to the display showing the battle in orbit. "My people are up there, dying to protect your world. Not because we expect to win, but because it's the right thing to do. So I'm asking you, Counselor, what impossible thing can your people do right now to help us?" Vex stared at her for a long moment, his bioluminescent pattern swirling with a complex mix of emotions. Then, slowly, a new pattern emerged, one of resolve. "There is one thing," he said, "a project we abandoned long ago because we feared its power. But perhaps in this darkest hour, it is exactly what we need." As Vex hurried away to confer with the other Aetheri leaders, Admiral Chen turned back to the battle display. The situation in orbit was deteriorating rapidly. The human fleet was being pushed back, forced to concede more and more space to the advancing Cricks. But Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Aetheri were rallying, finding a strength they didn't know they possessed. And somewhere out in the black of space, the main Earth fleet was racing towards Aether, pushing their engines to the limit. The battle was far from over. Humanity had made its stand alongside the Aetheri, and they would see it through to the end, whatever that end might be. Alliance and innovation. As the space battle raged above, Aether's surface was a hive of frenzied activity. The Aetheri, inspired by humanity's sacrificial stand and galvanized by High Counselor Vex's words, were delving deep into their scientific archives, searching for the project he had mentioned. Lyra and Jen found themselves at the heart of this desperate endeavor. They had been summoned to the Aetheri's most secure research facility, a massive biostructure nestled within the roots of an ancient mountain. "The Nexus Project," Vex explained as they hurried through pulsating corridors. "It was meant to be the ultimate expression of our biotechnology, a way to link every living thing on Aether into a single vast intelligence." Zhen's bioluminescent patterns flickered with recognition. "I remember reading about this, but it was shut down because we feared it would destroy our individuality." "Yes," Vex finished, But now, it may be our only hope. They entered a cavernous chamber, its walls lined with what looked like giant, translucent pods. Inside each pod was a shimmering, opalescent fluid that seemed to move with a life of its own. These are quantum-entangled bioneural networks, Lyra breathed, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. Each one capable of processing power that rivals our largest biocomputers. Vex nodded. And when linked together, they form the core of the Nexus. But we need more than just processing power. We need a way to direct it, to use it as a weapon against the Crix. That's where we come in, said a new voice. Dr. Yuki Tanaka entered the chamber, followed by a team of human scientists and engineers. We've been analyzing the Crix ship signatures. Their tech is advanced, but it's also highly networked. If we can tap into that network, we could disrupt their entire fleet. Zhen finished, his patterns pulsing with excitement. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Ethery biotechnologists worked alongside human computer experts, merging their knowledge in ways never before attempted. Lyra and Zhen were at the forefront, their deep understanding of ethery systems proving invaluable as they interfaced the alien biotechnology with human quantum computers. Above them, the battle continued to rage. The human fleet, though fighting valiantly, was being pushed back. The Crix advance force had been joined by elements of their main fleet, and the defenders were now hopelessly outnumbered. In the Ethery Command Center, Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays with growing concern. "We can't hold them much longer," she muttered. "Where are our reinforcements?" As if in answer, a communication officer called out, "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Earth Fleet." The main display flickered to life, showing the face of Fleet Admiral Hiroshi Tanaka, Yuki's father and the overall commander of Earth's expeditionary force. "Kira," he said, his voice tight with tension, "we're still 6 hours out. The Crix pulled some kind of trick with local space-time, delayed us. How's it looking there?" Chen's face was grim. "Not good, sir. We're outnumbered and outgunned. The Aethery are working on something big, but I don't know if we can hold out long enough for it to make a difference." Tanaka nodded solemnly. "You've done well, Kira. Better than anyone could have expected. If you need to retreat—" "No," Chen interrupted, her voice firm. "We made a promise to the Ethery. We're seeing this through, one way or another." A ghost of a smile flickered across Tanaka's face. "That's my girl. Hold the line, Kira. We're coming as fast as we can." As the transmission ended, Chen turned to her staff. "All right, people, we've got to buy more time. I want every trick, every dirty tactic we've got. Make these bastards work for every inch of space." Back in the Nexus chamber, the combined Ethery-human team was on the verge of a breakthrough. The bioneural networks were online, their processing power linked with the most advanced human quantum computers. "We've got it," Yuki exclaimed, her fingers flying over a holographic interface. "We can use the Nexus to generate a quantumly entangled signal that will propagate through the Crix fleet's network. It should disrupt their communications, weapons, everything." Lyra's patterns pulsed with cautious optimism. "But how do we target it? The Crix ships are in constant motion." Zhen stepped forward, his tendrils weaving complex patterns in the air. "What if we don't target it? What if we let it propagate through everything?" There was a moment of stunned silence as the implications sank in. "You mean, broadcasted across the entire system?" Yuki asked. Zhen nodded. "The Nexus was designed to link all life on Aether. If we expand that concept, use the planet itself as a transmitter, we could create a system-wide quantum field." Lyra finished, her patterns blazing with excitement. "It would affect everything. But our tech is built to work with organic systems," Yuki realized. "It wouldn't harm us or the Aethery, but for the Crix." High Counselor Vex, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "The risk to Aether is less than the certainty of Crix occupation." Chen's voice came from a nearby comm unit. She had been listening in. Do it. The next hour was a frenzy of activity as the team worked to reconfigure the Nexus. Aetheri across the planet volunteered to link themselves into the system, adding their brainpower to the vast organic supercomputer. In orbit, the human fleet fought with desperate courage, buying time with their lives. Ships on both sides were reduced to drifting hulks or spectacular explosions that lit up Aether's sky. Finally, Lyra looked up from her console, her patterns a complex swirl of fear and determination. It's ready. Chen's voice came through once more. The Cricks have broken through our last line. It's now or never. Vex stepped forward, placing his tendrils on the main control interface. For Aether, he said softly. For Earth, Yuki added, her hand joining his. Together, they activated the Nexus. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like a ripple becoming a tsunami, a wave of quantum energy burst forth from Aether. It washed over the battling fleets, through the stark void of space, to the very edges of the star system. On the Crick ships, chaos erupted. Weapons went dead, engines sputtered and failed, and communication systems dissolved into meaningless static. Highly networked cybernetic implants that many Cricks relied on suddenly turned against them, leaving them crippled and disoriented. The human ships, their systems hardened against the quantum pulse, pressed their advantage. With the Cricks' fleet in disarray, they were able to inflict disproportionate damage, turning the tide of the battle. And then, at the system's edge, new contacts appeared on the sensors. The main Earth fleet had arrived, their weapons hot and their crews spoiling for a fight. The Cricks, faced with a reinvigorated enemy and stripped of their technological advantages, did something they had rarely done in their long history of conquest. They retreated. As the Cricks' fleet fled the Aether system, leaving behind their dead and crippled ships, a cheer went up from the human crews. On Aether's surface, the Aetheries' bioluminescent celebrations lit up the night sky. In the Nexus chamber, Lyra, Zhen, and Yuki shared a moment of stunned silence before breaking into their own celebrations. They had done it. Against all odds, they had driven back the Cricks. Admiral Chen's voice, tired but triumphant, came over the comm. Well done, everyone. The Cricks are in full retreat. Aether is safe. As the immediate danger passed, the full impact of what they had accomplished began to sink in. The Aetherian humans had not just won a battle, they had fundamentally changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The Nexus, a merger of Aetheri biotechnology and human innovation, represented a leap forward in both computing and weapons technology. The quantum pulse that had crippled the Cricks' fleet could potentially be adapted to defend other worlds. More than that, the alliance between Earth and Aether sent a powerful message to the rest of the galaxy. Humanity, the upstart species that many had dismissed, had proven itself a force to be reckoned with. And the Aetheri, once thought of as passive and defenseless, had shown that their peaceful nature did not preclude them from defending themselves when pushed. The battle for Aether. As the cleanup began, and diplomats from Earth and Aether began discussing the future of their alliance, Lyra found herself standing on one of the floating islands, gazing up at the sky. The debris from the battle still glittered occasionally as it caught the light of Aether's twin suns, a reminder of how close they had come to annihilation. Admiral Chen approached, looking weary but satisfied. "Quite a view," she said, following Lyra's gaze. Lyra's bioluminescent patterns shimmered with a mix of emotions. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "We actually did it." Chen nodded. "We did. But it's what comes next that really matters." Before Lyra could ask what she meant, they were joined by Zhen, Yuki, and High Counselor Vex. The group stood in companionable silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts about the momentous events they had just experienced. Vex was the first to speak. "Admiral Chen, Dr. Tanaka, on behalf of all Aetheri, I want to express our deepest gratitude. You came to our aid when no one else would, risking your lives for a people you barely knew. We will never forget this." Chen smiled. That's who we are, counselor. Humanity has a long history of standing up for what's right, even when it's not easy or safe. But we couldn't have done this without you. The courage and innovation of the Aetheri people were crucial to our victory. Yuki nodded enthusiastically. The Nexus is unlike anything we've ever seen. The potential applications are staggering. If we continue to work together, who knows what we might achieve? Zhen's patterns pulsed with excitement. Indeed, our biotechnology combined with your quantum computing, we could revolutionize everything from medicine to space travel. And defense, Chen added quietly. The Krix will be back, and they won't be alone. Other powers in the galaxy will have taken notice of what happened here. Vex's patterns dimmed slightly. You believe we will face more threats? Chen's expression was serious. I believe that the galaxy just got a wake-up call. Humanity and the Aetheri working together. That's going to shake things up. Some will see it as an opportunity for peaceful cooperation. Others will see it as a threat. Lyra felt a chill run through her. So what do? We prepare, Chen said firmly. We build on what we've accomplished here. Not just militarily, but diplomatically, scientifically, culturally. We show the galaxy that there's strength in diversity, in cooperation. Yuki's eyes were shining with enthusiasm. Think about it. We could create a network of allied worlds, sharing knowledge, resources, and mutual defense. The Aetheri's mastery of biotechnology, Earth's industrial capacity and adaptability. And who knows what other species might join us? Zhen added. Those who were too afraid to stand against the Krix before might find courage in our example. Vex's bioluminescent patterns swirled thoughtfully. It would be a significant change for my people. We have always kept to ourselves, focused on our own pursuits. But perhaps it is time for us to take a more active role in galactic affairs. Chen nodded approvingly. That's the spirit. We're stronger together. And who knows? Maybe one day, we'll be strong enough that even the Krix will think twice before starting a fight. As they continued to discuss the future, a flutter of movement caught Lyra's eye. A flock of native Aetheri creatures, similar to Earth's butterflies, but with bioluminescent wings, had emerged from hiding. They danced through the air, their lights pulsing in harmony with the bioluminescent patterns of the Aetheri. Lyra smiled, seeing in this small moment a reflection of the larger truth they had discovered. Different species working in harmony, creating something beautiful and powerful. You know, she said, interrupting the ongoing discussion, I think we've already taken the first step towards that future you're talking about. The others looked at her quizzically. Look at us, Lyra explained, her patterns glowing warmly. Aetheri and humans, standing together as friends, as allies. We've already proven that we're stronger together than we ever could be apart. Chen grinned. Couldn't have said it better myself. As the group looked out over the vast expanse of Aether, the future seemed to stretch out before them, full of challenges, but also brimming with potential. The battle for Aether was over, but a new chapter in galactic history was just beginning. In the days and weeks that followed, news of the Earth-Aetheri alliance spread across the galaxy. Many were shocked that the supposedly weak and isolated Aetheri had not only survived a Krix invasion, but had actually driven them back. The fact that they had done so with the help of humanity, a species many had dismissed as primitive and insignificant, only added to the sensation. Diplomats and scientists from various worlds began to arrive on Aether, eager to learn more about the alliance and the technology that had defeated the Krix. Some came with offers of friendship and cooperation, while others were clearly there to assess the potential threat. The Galactic Confederation, embarrassed by their earlier inaction, scrambled to recognize the Earth-Aetheri alliance and offer them a seat at the table. Their overtures were met with polite but firm responses. The alliance would be happy to work with the Confederation, but on equal terms, not as supplicants. As for the Krix, they retreated to lick their wounds, but few believed they would remain quiet for long. Their defeat at Aether had been a significant blow to their reputation, and they would be looking for a way to reassert their dominance. But for now, at least, there was peace, and in that peace, the seeds of a new galactic order were being sown, one based not on force or fear, but on cooperation, innovation, and the simple yet powerful idea that had brought humanity across the vast gulf of space to stand with the Aetheri. That in the face of darkness, it is better to light a candle than to curse the night. As Aether's twin suns set on another day, casting the floating islands in a warm golden glow, Lyra stood with her human friends, watching the first ships of the new Earth Aetheri fleet take shape in orbit. They were beautiful, sleek vessels that combined the organic elegance of Aetheri biotechnology with the rugged functionality of human engineering. "You know," Lyra said, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with quiet joy, "when I first heard your message, we hear you. Help is coming. Hold on. I hardly dared to hope. But you came. You stood with us. And now I believe anything is possible." Admiral Chen smiled, putting a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "That's the thing about hope, Lyra. Sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness, one moment of courage to change everything." As night fell on Aether, the stars came out, twinkling with newfound promise. And in those stars, two species, one ancient and peaceful, one young and bold, saw not the cold, uncaring void that had once threatened to swallow them, but a vast frontier of possibility. Together, they had faced the darkness. Together, they had prevailed. And together, they would forge a future brighter than either could have imagined alone. The universe, it seemed, would never be the same again.